Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. Welcome to Alta Live. I'm so excited to be speaking with Blythe Roberson. Blythe has been on Alta Live before, talking about all sorts of things, including her books. But today, we're going to be talking about her hunting journey in Montana. This is particularly interesting as Blythe is a vegan. But she went hunting in Montana. She wrote about it for an Alta newsletter at altaonline.com. And it's funny. Her piece is funny. It's kind of heartbreaking. It's a real roller coaster of emotions, and I encourage you to read it. In fact, while I'm talking about how great she is, I'm going to drop it in the chat right now. I also encourage all of you to let us know where you're zooming in from. Because it's always fun to see where our Alta Live community is coming from. Before we begin, I have two kind of regular spiels that I make. The first is to tell you about our wonderful guest. Blythe is a comedian, a humor writer, and the author of, look at this, How to Date Men When You Hate Men. So relatable. And America the Beautiful? Question mark. One woman in a borrowed Prius on the road most traveled. This is fantastic. This is really, really fun. They both are. And I encourage you to check them out. She has written for Alta Journal, The New Yorker, Cosmopolitan, Kinfolk, Esquire, Vice Magazine, and the NPR quiz show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Blythe was raised between Illinois and Wisconsin, and she currently is in Brooklyn, New York. Blythe, you are so awesome for coming in at 3:30 your time. Folks, if you are new to Alta Journal, if you have no idea where you are and what is going on, Alta Journal is a quarterly magazine focused on California and the West. We're also a really cool website. We make this really big, beautiful, stunning magazine. Comes out every quarter. In fact, a new one is going to hit your mailboxes and newsstands first week of April, last week of March. So now is the perfect time to subscribe. You can join us as a member for $50 a year. You get 4 gorgeous issues of Alta, and we send you a little gift, which is a collection of all of the cartoons. We do cartoons that have appeared in the first 5 years of Alta. We're 7.5 right now. We host free weekly shows like this. Alta Live is every Wednesday at 12:30, and we also host the California Book Club. Manuel Munoz is our next guest, and that is, oh my gosh, tomorrow night. So join us for that. He's going to be talking with John Freeman about his book, The Consequences. Anyway, we have free events. We do in-person events. We make a really beautiful magazine and website. I hope you will consider joining us as a member. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions for Blythe. There's also a chat to let us, I see Eagle Rock, California, Palm Springs, Tracy, California, Washington, D.C. Hello, San Marcos, Texas. Ojai, Ukiah, welcome everyone. I am up north in Novato, California, and I have never been hunting. Blythe, you are in Brooklyn.
Yes.
All right, first of all, explain how you are a vegan who, oh, let me make my joke first. I warned
Oh,
Blythe
yeah.
I'm going to do this joke. All right, so I make this joke to our publisher and editor, Will Hurst, all the time. He went to Harvard, and I say, Will, if a Harvard grad is at a party and a vegan is a party, which one mentions it first? Is it a race to announce? Blythe, amazingly enough, is both a Harvard grad and a vegan. Could you put it on a sweatshirt? Do you wear it like a hat?
Yeah, no, I have all sorts of tote bags that say I went to Harvard and I'm a vegan and I am so great and very cool and please
And I
ask
do CrossFit.
me. Yeah. Actually, one of the greatest joys in my life, I guess, is when I've known someone for a while and I mention one of these things and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a vegan." And I'm like, "Yes, it works."
All right. Well, she's vegan, everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
point made. And she went to Harvard, so she's winning in life. All right. So how on earth can you be, the title of your piece is The Vegan Hunter.
Yeah.
And can you take us on you ended up kind of hunting in Montana due to a bad breakup. Set the
Yes.
stage for us, please.
Yeah, so I was raised in Illinois and Wisconsin and was not in the hunting kind of community at all. Neither of my parents or neither of my step parents hunt, and no one in our family had guns. I had never shot a gun. I'm sure there were kids I went to school with that hunted, but it just wasn't something that was in my life. But instead, my best friend went vegetarian, and then I copied her and went vegan because I read Eating Animals. And so when this story starts, I guess this was around 2022, I had been vegan at that point for like 12 years. And I was on Hinge, which is like the worst place in the world. And
Hinge is a dating app for
yeah,
those who've been out of the scene for a while. Hinge is a
yes.
dating app.
Yeah, so I was trying to find love online, a cursed endeavor. And I had posted about this skull, if you can see it here in the window. I found this skull.
Oh, yes. Okay, we
Yeah,
see there's a skull there in the corner of the window, folks.
yeah. So I had found one of the prompts on Hinge is like, I can't stop talking about dot 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 dot. And I was like, I can't stop talking about trying to clean the flesh off this skull I found in the desert. Um, because I couldn't. It was very traumatizing trying to get the flesh off this skull to put it in my window. But a guy on Hinge DM'd me and was like, Blythe, I know how to clean a skull. And so I was like, that's so sexy. Tell me more. And it ended up that this was a guy who had been vegan once, but now was only eating meat that he hunted, or so he said. And so we started dating. We dated for about a year in total, and we went on a lot of hikes. And in one of the early hikes we went on, we were just walking and he was able to tell me all this stuff about the forest. And like at one point he was like, oh, like if we walk 30 feet off trail this way, I think we're going to see a deer. And I was like, okay. And we did, and we saw a deer, and it was just like magic. And I realized that I had cared about nature for a long time, and I'd spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time hiking, but he just knew it so much more deeply than I did. And that was because he paid really close attention because he was a hunter and he had to learn about all these animals that he hunted and all these ecosystems. So I started getting interested in hunting as a way to be a naturalist. Um, and he got me also hooked on the show Meat Eater, which I had pulled down before the Zoom started, Stephen Ranella's cookbook about hunting small game, which is just a TV show where this guy, Stephen Ranella, goes outside and hunts animals. And it was also really informational and just takes place in
And
all
then
these,
cooks them.
yeah, and then cooks them, which is an important part of the show. He always makes sure he eats the animal. Um, so anyways, over the course of a year, I just got really interested in how hunting could actually be a way to love nature and not like something. It didn't seem to me that eating hunted meat was like cruel in the way that eating factory farmed meat was. So I was like, okay, you know what? I want to become a hunter. But at that point, he and I broke up. So I was like, kind of like, damn, I spent so much time kind of changing a really fundamental thing that I believed, and now I don't really have any way to follow through on what I wanted to do. So that's, I guess, where the story started.
And so you chose to go onward. And
Yeah.
actually, despite breaking up with Michael from
Mhm.
your article, you decide to go hunting. How did you decide? Michael had been frequently hunting in Montana. In fact,
Mhm.
it's a whole like side story. This guy,
Yes.
the breakup that happens because of his license in Montana that prompted him to need to be honest. I mean,
Mhm.
do not date people on Hinge. It was my takeaway. Um, you end up going to, I mean, did you go to like find his hunting guide or his hunting grounds?
I did not. So he had been hunting a lot with friends. He had lived in Montana for a while, and so he had friends that he hunted out there with. But at a certain point, I was like, how am I going to go hunting? Especially because I don't own a gun. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces that need to happen for me to go hunting. And I mentioned this to, I think, Blaze and or Will at Alta, and they were like, oh, Will, like, or I think I maybe even was like, someone should profile Steven Ranella. And they were like, you should do that. And I was like, I couldn't possibly profile Steven Ranella, but I do want to go hunting. And so then the idea was like, oh, maybe Alta could help. So since Alta focuses on California and the West, I was like, okay, where in California and the West could I possibly hunt? And I had a good friend of mine is from San Luis Obispo and knows some people that, and I guess now I'm watching Yellowstone and I know this is like a standard type of person, but some guys from some rich people in California bought up a lodge in Montana. And the overseer of that lodge was also a hunting outfitter. And so my friend who knew these people had stayed there and was like, this guy, Seth, is incredibly knowledgeable. He's so kind. He's so nice to hang out with. Like, you should contact him and see if he'll take you hunting, because that would be a great first experience. And so I looked into it, and his hunting website for Yak River Outfitters was like, we specifically want to take out first time hunters and like teach people who are new to it. So it did seem like the perfect thing to do. And then it was kind of nice also that I had heard so much about hunting in Montana and got to go out there.
It sounds a little bit like the plot of City Slickers,
Oh
like
my
city
God.
folk going out
Yeah.
to a ranch where they show you how to, pretend you're a cowboy, or in this case, a hunter. Okay, so you fly to Montana,
Mhm.
vegan, animal lover, you do not want to harm animals. And very specifically, I mean, you kind of go into you write a lot about not wanting to take a life, and really kind of struggling with
Yeah.
the choice.
Yeah.
And then Seth gives you a gun and takes you out. What you were hunting for specifically grouse?
Yes, which I can show for anyone who might not know. This is a ruffed grouse, which is one of the grouse that I hunted. They're just cute little birds. Um, yeah, so my ex had mostly hunted, well, I guess he had hunted a lot of stuff, but the stuff we had talked most about was deer. And like in Meat Eater, the show, Steven Ranella is often hunting deer. It's obviously charismatic megafauna, as they say. Um, and it just seemed to me that if I was going to be hunting alone, hunting a deer was going to be a lot more difficult. You know, it's like a lot of animal to carry out of the woods and to process. And um, also, it's just for larger animals, there's more of like a process to like get a license or a tag to hunt those animals. So a grouse seemed like a good entry point, because you just buy the license online. You can like hunt for however many days and up to the bag limit, and they're less like, they're not mammals, so it feels a little bit less like, oh my God, I can't murder this thing with these big cute eyes. And then someone I refer to him, and I couldn't believe this got through to the published piece, but someone that I call best friend Greg, because he's not my best friend, I barely know him, but he's my friend's best friend. Best friend Greg had DM'd me, and he was like, you should hunt grouse because upland bird hunting is basically like hiking with a gun. And so that seemed like the perfect thing for me, a person who loved to hike but had not been hunting before. So it did end up being great. But as you said, I was like, I knew I wanted to kill an animal to eat it, but I didn't want to make an animal suffer. And so I was
Right.
like, really trying to make sure that did not happen, which then if you read the piece, it did happen. Like, yeah.
So yeah, that's my next question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, I've only shot a gun a couple of times, but I know that it feels, and the experience is a lot different than it looks on TV and in
Yeah.
movies. And so you went out hunting,
Mhm.
and shot a grouse, and kind of was the
Yeah.
first one that kind of got clipped.
Yeah, it was like,
This poor grouse had
I
a
know this
slow
poor,
death.
yeah. Yeah, so it was like, so at this point when I'm hunting this grouse, this is like my third day of my life that I've ever shot a gun. I'd been practicing shooting twice before, and then when I got there, I was like, I want to practice shooting a lot in the morning, and I did. But like I thought that's still not a lot of practice. So I clipped this. Well, first I shot the grouse, completely missed it. And Christina, our incredible photographer, later was like, yeah, I have a photo of you shooting the grouse the first time. And I almost wondered if you were trying to miss it because you were like so off in your aim. And I was like, thanks, Christina. Cool.
Yeah.
No, I was trying to kill it. But yeah, I guess I clipped it and it like hopped off, and then I like shot it again and still it didn't die. And so then we had to reload the gun because there was only 3 shells in it. And then I hit it again, and it finally seemed like it was dead. And I was like, thank God. And then it got up and hopped away, and Seth, bless him, was like, here, let me just like get it. And so he did. Yeah, and it was just like horrible. Something my ex said was sometimes hunting hurts my feelings, and I really understood in that moment. It just was like, it made me feel just, like so ashamed and angry at myself that the reason I had come to hunting was to like be respectful of nature, and because I loved animals and I loved these places, and I was like, oh, I did the thing that I didn't want to do, which was I made this poor little bird suffer.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Was a very heart-wrenching,
Yeah.
part of your article. Can you talk a little bit more about how that hunting connects with wanting to be more respectful and connected to nature?
Yeah. I think for for me it's like, okay, the reason I stopped eating, this is where I'm like, I have such a mental block about talking about why I stopped eating meat, because I feel like this is the thing people hate about vegans. But like the reason I stopped eating meat was because as I saw it, a lot of the practices used to feed meat to the billions of people on the planet are really cruel to animals and to the world as a whole. Just like anyone who's read about factory farming knows how horrific the conditions that animals are living in are. And then just like the clear cutting of land to grow the feed for these animals, and just like all the runoff of like all the just everything is so horrible, and just shipping all this meat across the planet, and even like uh I'm like, I feel like there are 12 different things where people are like, this is the number one thing you can do to like prevent climate change, and I do feel like not eating meat we hear a lot
Yeah.
as one of them. Whereas like when people go hunting and do it in a way that's respectful, I think it's like you're really, if you want to hunt a deer, you have to learn where that deer lives. You have to learn what that deer eats. You have to learn about like the terrain of this place. You have to learn all these different things. You have to really deeply understand this animal, the place where you live. And I just saw, for my ex at least, and then talking to other people who hunted in a similar way and watching Meat Eater, it was like, oh, this is a thing that people do who love to be outside, who care about animals and places. So I was like, I want to be outside and learning about these animals more. And the eating meat was like for me an important part of, like, I would never murder an animal and not eat it, but it wasn't like, oh, I like need to eat meat and this is the way that I'm going to reincorporate it in my diet, if that makes sense. It was more like I want to become a deeper appreciator of nature. And I think that placing myself in nature as part of this chain is a way to do that. There's also, sorry, this is like such a word salady answer, but I read a book along the way called The Mindful Carnivore by this man, Tovar Cerulli, whose name I'm probably butchering, but he was a vegan that became a hunter. And he wrote a lot about how, and I'm watching Yellowstone, and I just watched an episode where Kevin Costner basically makes the same argument, but about how many deer have to be killed and how many animals have to be killed to maintain farmland as well. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I think like if we're being honest with ourselves, there is like the death of animals is involved in eating. And so I might as well like be clear-eyed about that, I guess.
Somewhere in the archive, Alta has done stories about this if I dig through my
Yeah.
middle-aged mind. So were you thinking, and I forgive me if you mentioned this in the article and it slipped my brain, but were you thinking like, I'm going to do this once to kind of connect with nature in this really specific, intense, personal way? Or were you thinking about potentially reincorporating meat regularly into your life? Because you describe yourself as not a particularly strict vegan.
Yes.
You've
Yeah.
strayed a couple of times.
Yeah. No, I was definitely like, uh, I want this to be part of my life going forward. And it's difficult, I still live in Brooklyn and I still don't have a car and like I still don't have a gun. Um, and
You want a gun?
I kind of don't want a gun. I mean, I think I want a gun in that like I want a house in Montana. Like it would be nice to like have the option to do this, but it's really expensive to own a gun in New York City and there's a lot of like paperwork you have to do, which is good, I think, probably. Um, but yeah, it's like hard for me still in the way my life is configured to continue hunting, but I didn't, it was just such a, it took a lot of thinking and convincing over the course of a year with someone that I love, talking, having a lot of conversations about it to get me to the place where I was like, okay, I want to like kill and eat an animal. So it wasn't like, I just want to do this one time. Um, so going forward, I'm interested in it. I have a sister-in-law who lives in Wisconsin and grew up in Mississippi who works a lot with the Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin and like leads mentored hunts and stuff. So she and I might go out. I have some friends who took me shooting that I met through the hunting community when I was trying to get into it and working on this article. People I found were really generous with their time and we might go hunting squirrels this weekend. And then I have also kind of broadened my rules for myself where I'm like, I'm going to eat meat that I personally murdered or that was murdered by someone that I love. So like when I go home, I'll eat venison that my sister-in-law hunted and stuff like that. Or my best friend who Emmy who factors in at the end of the article, she had chickens this past summer, which were very murderous, like evil birds, but they laid eggs. And so I was like, okay, I guess I can like eat an egg that my friend's chickens laid in her tomatoes. So
It's interesting that you call it murder.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like my ex called it that, and I thought it was funny, but also really honest about like, okay, if you're hunting animals, you are murdering animals. And I think there are a lot of as I got into reading about hunting, a lot of people call it harvesting, which is just, I think, one of those like euphemisms that is kind of silly and kind of like not emotionally honest. And like I think it's like if you're gonna kill an animal, if you're gonna murder a squirrel, you should just be willing to admit that you murdered a squirrel.
All right. So eventually you get a clean shot of a grouse
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you ate
Mm-hmm.
the heart,
Yeah.
which is very last of the Mohicans. I mean, really intense. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the first grouse that I had shot, Seth and Christina and I went back to the lodge and processed it, and Seth kind of showed me everything he was doing so that I could do it one day. And he brought everything to his incredible wife, Mary Beth, who cooked it up for me in a pot pie that tasted delicious. Um, but that night, as Mary Beth was processing everything, I felt so bad about what I had done and the pain that this bird had been in that I called Emmy, who was the friend that I copied by going vegetarian. And she had part of the reason I was like, oh, maybe I could hunt is Emmy had bought ducks the summer before, which I thought she had bought as pets. She had like her boyfriend built this duck palace for them to live in. And then in November, she killed them and ate them for Thanksgiving. And she like built a kill cone. She brought them home to her childhood home
She
and like
built a kill cone.
yeah, she built a cone that she like nailed to a tree and she put the ducks upside down and apparently it makes them suffer less or something. Um so she had processed these ducks and was like, yeah, it was hard. It was hard killing the first one. And she was like, did you eat the heart? And I was like, I didn't eat the heart. We didn't even save the heart. And she's like, well, you can eat the heart and you can eat the liver and you can eat these things. And I was like, okay, like I do want to keep doing this. Like there was a reason I went hunting on purpose, even if I like made a big mess of it. And I do want to get better. Like these things are still important to me. So the next day I went and shot another grouse, which I also missed the first time, but the second time I didn't miss. And so when Seth was processing that bird, I was like, can I please save the heart? And then through a series of weather-based misadventures, I ended up flying to Milwaukee instead of straight back to New York. And Emmy cooked up the heart for me and I ate it. And it was like, it tasted great. And yeah, it tasted pretty, as someone who hadn't had meat in like 13 years at that point, 14, it tasted normal to me. And it felt really good to use as much of the animal as
Yeah.
I could. Yeah.
That was the significance of eating an organ
Yes.
to utilize. Did you save the feathers?
I didn't save the feathers of that bird, but I have two of the tail feathers from the first bird, which Seth was like, "Do you want these?" And I was like, "I do," to look at and think about, my regrets and the reason that I did this. And yeah, so I have those and I look them every day.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that you're considering, squirrel hunting this weekend.
I
It seems like going from 0 to 60 really
know.
quickly, especially since you've broken up with the hunter.
Hmm.
What about it once you did it? Because in this article, we kind of go through this journey with you. You get out to Montana, you come back through Milwaukee, we kill a few grouse along the way, you eat the heart, you kind of it seems to me a kind of a complete experience. Okay, Blythe has done what she set out to do. Why have you decided to continue? And are you still a
Yeah.
vegan?
Yes. Well, I'm still a vegan, but I'm still bad at it sometimes. I eat a lot of like, I'm pretty easy on being like, I guess I'll just put a little bit of butter on this. Or I'm like, I guess, these M&Ms are right here, but I'm still pretty strict about it. But I think like part of the reason, okay, well, this weekend, for example, if it ends up happening, it's like I live in New York City. I don't have a car. It's pretty hard for me to get out of the city. One of the things that I loved about dating Michael was that he lived upstate, so we spent a lot of time outside, and it's just harder for me to do that. Um, so when I was learning about hunting, I met all these people who are really outdoor oriented and who are really funny and interesting and have so much to teach me, and they all hang out hunting, and now I'm Instagram friends with them and see them, going duck hunting and going to all these really beautiful places, and they're all so thoughtful um and just like one of them was like, "Oh yeah, we might be going to hunt squirrels." And I'm like, even if I don't shoot a squirrel, I think like going to these forests, learning about the what threats these animals are facing, learning about these places that are so near where I live, but I'm so uninformed about. I feel like that's really just kind of everything that I want to do in life. So it's like, in a way, hunting is a way to open a world up to me, and I think like as a way to open the outdoors up to people. But then I also have just legitimately heard that squirrel tastes really good because they're eating nuts all the time, so they it tastes like nuts.
Nutty?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh my God, please email me and tell me what the squirrel tastes like after. I've
It
never
will.
had squirrel.
Yeah.
Question from the audience. The skull that you initially posted on your Hinge profile, um, that was difficult to clean the flesh off of. What animal is that from? Would you mind sharing?
Yes, it is from a domestic sheep.
A
My
pet?
no, I guess not a domestic sheep. It's from like a farm sheep. It's not from like a like desert sheep. It's from just I don't know if this reads as horns, but my friend lived in the middle of nowhere, or owned a town in the middle of nowhere, Utah, where sometimes just like herds of cattle would walk through, and so I think there was sheep in the area as well, and one of them died. I did an artist residency out there and spent an hour every afternoon just like stretching my legs by walking around the desert looking for bones. And on the last day, I found two full skeletons. So
Of animals.
of animals, yeah, no, yeah, of animals.
Okay. I'm my true crime brain is like you do. Uh, it seems to me like you've always had a little bit of a fascination with before the now ex-boyfriend, you've always been curious. If you're wandering around the desert at a residency looking for bones as opposed to, I don't know, flowers. Has this been something that's been poking at you for years?
Yeah, I forget if I think this got cut in the final article, but I went to a party a couple years ago in Brooklyn, and my friend Fran was like, "This is Blythe. She loves when nature is gross," which is true, I think. Like, um, yeah, I think there's so much that you can learn about. I mean, I also, while writing or while going on this journey, was like, oh no, wait, am I a serial killer? And I think I'm not, but I was like, yeah, there's so much you can learn from processing an animal, like breaking it down. There's so much you can learn from bones in the forest. And like, I'm right now wearing a little gravestone as a necklace that says this too shall pass. So I think definitely like an awareness of the fact that we're all gonna die, and if we're lucky, come back as grass is something that I think about a lot. Yeah, so hunting, I guess, was not too hard of a stretch from there.
Andrew points out that squirrels have an acorny taste. They're going to taste
Mm,
like acorns.
amazing.
Donna just wants you to know that she loved America the Beautiful. So
Oh,
shout
yeah.
out to Donna. Blythe, I think that's our 30 minutes. I feel like a therapist, but I have learned so much. Thank you so much for your beautiful article. Folks, this interview has been recorded and we're gonna send you links to read The Vegan Hunter, buy Blythe's books. Anything else that popped up today, my wonderful colleague Liz is taking notes, and we'll shoot everyone an email with this recording, and links to everything we talked about today, and an invitation to next week. We are going to meet with a gay veteran who was dishonorably discharged during the Lavender Scare. She was kicked out of the Army for being gay. She has managed, with the help of an attorney, to get her discharge changed to an honorable discharge and is now helping other gay veterans do the same. I'm going to be joined by her. Her name is Helen. I'm so sorry, I forget Helen's last name. Anyway, Helen's coming on next week with her attorney to tell us all about kind of the plight of gay veterans getting their dishonorable discharges reversed. Join us for that. That's a week from today. And again, Blythe Roberson, you are funny and interesting and a delight to talk to. So thank you so much for joining us today.
This was such a blast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care, and we will see you soon. Bye.